Let's begin by looking at the most common seductive and ultimately destructive lie we tell ourselves as high-achieving leaders. How many times have you said to yourself in the quiet exhaustion of a Friday evening, I will finally be able to relax when this massive project is launched? How many times have you convinced yourself, I will finally feel successful, I will finally feel like I am enough when I hit that specific revenue target, or get that VP title, or scale my team to that exact size? And if you are truly honest with yourself, how many times have you actually reached that exact milestone, celebrated for perhaps 10 minutes, received the round of applause, and then woken up the very next morning feeling the exact same underlying anxiety, the exact same heavy pressure, and the exact same hollow emptiness? We spend our entire professional lives chasing the horizon, utterly convinced that the next accomplishment, the next zero in the bank account, or the next round of funding will permanently change how we feel inside. But it never does. The horizon always moves. And this is the trap of the hedonic treadmill. It is the grand illusion that a change in your external reality will automatically and permanently upgrade our internal emotional state. But what if I told you that what you call your reality doesn't actually exist in the way you think it does? What if your entire experience of leadership, of crippling stress, and of fleeting success is nothing more than a projection, a movie played through the dirty, scratched lens of your own limiting beliefs? Stay with me until the end of this episode. We are going to look at the cold evolutionary neuroscience of why your brain is literally wired to keep you dissatisfied, the profound philosophy of constructed reality, and I will share a deeply personal story of a moment where I achieved absolutely everything I thought I wanted, only to realize I was wearing the wrong pair of glasses. Welcome to the H2H experiment. I am João and I am your host. If you've been searching for a leadership podcast that strips away the corporate jargon and goes straight to the psychological core of why we do what we do, you are in the right place. This is not just another typical self-improvement podcast filled with life hacks. Today, we are diving deep into the architecture of human perception. We are going to deconstruct the hedonic treadmill, expose the limiting beliefs that act as our invisible filters, and learn how to fundamentally rewire the reality we experience every single day. To understand why we constantly feel like we are running out of breath but going absolutely nowhere, we have to look past our ambitions and look directly at the biological hardware we inherited from our ancestors. Psychologists use a term called hedonic adaptation, commonly known as the hedonic treadmill. The concept is simple, but absolutely devastating to the overachiever. Humans have this remarkable hardwired tendency to quickly return to a relatively stable baseline level of happiness despite major positive or negative events or life changes. Harvard psychologist Dr. Tal Ben-Shahar calls this the arrival fallacy, the false belief that reaching a valued destination can sustain happiness. Why does this happen? Well, it's actually quite simple, because your brain, our brains, does not care about your happiness. Your brain only cares about your survival. From an evolutionary standpoint, if early humans killed a mammoth and remained perfectly, blissfully satisfied for the next year, they would have starved to death. Satisfaction is an evolutionary feature, not a bug. It keeps us hunting. It keeps us foraging. When you get a massive promotion today, your brain receives a massive spike of dopamine. For a few euphoric days, you feel great. You feel like you have finally arrived. But dopamine is not a reward molecule. It is an anticipation and motivation molecule. It is not designed for sustained euphoria. Within a few short weeks, your nervous system recalibrates to protect itself from sensory overload. The promotion, the new salary, the corner office, it all becomes your new normal. The dopamine drops. The baseline returns. Suddenly, the new office and the new title don't make you happy anymore. The thrill is gone. So, what do? Because you haven't realized the game is rigged, you look for the next milestone. You speed up the treadmill. You set a bigger goal, more ambitious goal. I want to do more. I want to achieve more. We become like hamsters in bespoke suits, running endlessly on a wheel of achievements, believing that if we just run a little bit faster, sweat a little bit more, sacrifice a few more weekends, we will eventually reach a destination that brings us lasting peace. But you cannot reach a destination on a treadmill. You just get tired. You just burn out. All right, if external achievements and changing our environments cannot fundamentally change our internal state, then what actually determines how we experience our lives and our leadership? This brings us to one of the most powerful paradigm-shifting truths in both psychology and philosophy. You do not see the world as it is. You see the world as you are. Over 200 years ago, the philosopher Immanuel Kant argued that humans never actually interact with objective reality itself, which he called noumena. We only ever interact with our brain's perception of reality, which he called the phenomena. Modern neuroscience backs up Kant's philosophy perfectly with a bundle of nerves at the base of our brainstem called the reticular activating system. RAS. At any given second, your brain is bombarded by millions of bits of sensory data, colors, sounds, temperatures, words, micro-expressions on your team's faces. It's 11 billion bits per second that we get of data. If you consciously processed all of this, your brain would short circuit and you would go insane. So your RAS acts as a ruthless bouncer at the door of your consciousness. It filters out 99% of reality and only lets in the information that matches your pre-existing beliefs and current focus. Think about the red car syndrome. I'm not sure if you've heard about it. You decide you want to buy a red car, okay? And suddenly you see red cars everywhere. They were always there, but your RAS system was filtering them out. Once you made them important, once they became relevant to you, your brain started letting that data through. And here's where it gets dangerous for leaders. Your psychological filters are built out of your deeply held limiting beliefs. If you hold a subconscious limiting belief that I am only valuable when I am struggling, your RAS will literally filter out the easy solutions, the helpful colleagues, and the smooth processes. It will only present you with paths that require suffering, conflict, and late nights so that you can prove your own worth to yourself. It's impressive, isn't it? If you believe that people are fundamentally lazy and untrustworthy, you will completely filter out the 99 times your team went above and beyond, and your brain will hyperfixate on the one time someone dropped the ball 15 minutes late. You will use that one isolated incident as objective proof that your reality is dangerous and that you must micromanage everyone. What you call your stressful reality is not an objective fact. It is a highly curated, deeply distorted illusion constructed by a brain that is simply trying to prove your limiting beliefs right. Now, imagine this dynamic is scaled across an entire organization. As a leader, your limiting beliefs do not stay contained neatly within your own beautiful head. They leak out. They infect the environment. Your personal filters become the organizational culture. You project your illusions onto your team. If you are tuning into this as a human resources podcast, you know exactly the toll it takes. HR leaders sit on the front lines watching firsthand how everyone's trauma and uncalibrated filters of executive leaders devastate employees' retention, psychological safety, and overall being. Let's look at a few common leader filters. 1. The scarcity filter. A leader who believes there is never enough time. Never enough money, never enough talent will build a culture of paranoia. Every minor setback is viewed as an existential crisis because the leader's future interprets it as a threat to survival. Teams hoard resources and backstab each other because the leader has projected a reality of starvation. Filter 2, the perfection filter. A leader who believes that a single mistake means catastrophic failure and ties their personal worth to being flawless will build a culture of profound risk aversion. Innovation will die in this company, not because the team lacks creativity, but because the leader's perception of reality is too fragile to handle an experiment that fails. The team learns that it is safer to do nothing than to do something imperfectly. Third filter, the martyr filter. This is the leader who believes that success must require bleeding. They view healthy boundaries as weakness. They will send emails at 2 a.m. and view their own exhaustion as a moral high ground. Their team quickly learns that to be valued in this reality, they too must sacrifice their health and their families. When leaders fail to examine their own filters, they force the entire team to live inside the leader's psychological cage. You end up punishing your people not for what they actually did, but for how broken, scratched lens interpret what they did. All right, now I'd like to share a personal story on this matter. It's a realization that I had a while ago. It's an embarrassing truth, I have to say, but it's the exact moment I realized the treadmill was a lie and that was running it fast. I was chasing a very specific, highly ambitious professional milestone. It was a promotion. I had tied my entire sense of identity and self-worth to this target. I told myself the classic lie. Once I achieve this, I will finally be able to exhale and relax. I will have proven my value to the world. I will finally be secure. Of course, most of these statements, they are unconscious. I worked relentlessly. I sacrificed sleep, relationships, and my own peace of mind. I ran as fast as I could on the hedonic treadmill, treating every day as a battle. And eventually, against all odds, I hit the target. I remember the exact day it happened. I popped a bottle of expensive champagne, metaphorically, of course, as I don't like champagne. Who knows me knows that I don't like champagne. I received the congratulation texts. I updated my profile, started receiving messages on LinkedIn. It was beautiful. And for about 24 hours, I felt invincible. I felt like a king. But a few days later, the euphoria evaporated. I woke up, sat at the edge of my bed, in the quiet of my room, and I felt a crushing, suffocating weight in my chest. It was the exact same anxiety, exact same dread, the exact same fear of not being enough that I had felt for the last years. Basically, my whole life, to be honest. The environment had changed completely. I was objectively successful, but my internal frequency hadn't moved a single inch. Wherever I went, there I was. In that moment of profound emptiness, the truth hit me like a physical blow. The stress wasn't coming from the job. The pressure wasn't coming from the market. The anxiety wasn't coming from the size of the team. The stress was coming from my own internal filters. I was operating with a core, deeply buried, limiting belief that said, if I am not constantly pushing, fighting, and overcoming, I am falling behind and I will be abandoned. Because I hadn't done the hard work of changing that underlying belief, my brain simply took the new successful reality, realized there was no immediate threat, and panicked. It immediately found a way to make the success stressful. It projected a new threat on the horizon. What if I lose it all? How do I top this next year? What is the next step? I realized that day that I could change my title, my income, my company, and my continent, but if I didn't change my future, I would be fighting the exact same ghost for the rest of my life. The summit was just a mirage. Now, it's not only bad news. Here's the most liberating, empowering news you will hear today. Your filters are not permanent. Because of neuroplasticity, you have the biological power to rewire the lens through which you view the world. Your brain is malleable. You do not have to be a lifelong victim of the limiting beliefs you acquired when you were a vulnerable child, or the toxic beliefs that cutthroat corporate culture forced upon you. You cannot step off the hedonic treadmill by running faster. You step off by realizing that the treadmill is entirely in your mind. When you identify a limiting belief and consciously, repeatedly replace it with a liberating belief, your reality physically changes. When you shift your filter from everything is a threat to everything is data, a failed project stops being an existential disaster and suddenly becomes a masterclass in what not to do. You learn. When you shift your filter from I have to prove my worth to my worth is absolute, I am just here to create, the crippling pressure of a board meeting turns into a collaborative conversation. Now, I won't lie to you. This rewiring is uncomfortable. It might take some time, it takes effort. The first time you try to choose a new belief, it feels like you're lying to yourself. That is just the friction of your brain trying to pave a new neural pathway over an oldly rooted road. It takes repetition, it takes cognitive heavy lifting. But the facts of the event do not change. Your experience of the event transforms completely. You move from being a reactive victim of circumstance to an active, sovereign architect of your own perception. All right, now let's move to my favorite part of every episode. This week, I want you to conduct a radical experiment in perception. We are going to use a technique loosely inspired by cognitive behavior therapy to help you catch your limiting beliefs in real time, right in the middle of your workday. The name of this experiment is the camera lens audit. The next time you feel a sudden spike of stress, anger, anxiety, or deep frustration at work, perhaps after reading an email or leaving a tense meeting, I want you to stop. Do not react. Grab a piece of paper, really physical paper, draw a vertical line right down in the middle. On the left side, write the camera. Under this heading, I want you to write down only the objective, indisputable facts of the situation. Imagine a security camera recorded the event with no audio and no emotion. What actually happened? Example, John sent an email at 4 p.m. stating that the quarterly report will be delayed by 24 hours. Those are facts. On the right side, write the future. Under this heading, write down the story you are automatically telling yourself about those facts. What is the narrative your brain is spinning? Example, in the same context, John doesn't respect my time. He is deliberately undermining me. This whole team is falling apart. I have to do everything myself or we will completely fail. Now take a step back and look at the massive gap between the left side and the right side. That gap is your limiting belief. That gap is your hedonic treadmill. That gap is exactly where your suffering lives. You are not stressed about the 24-hour delay, the camera. You are stressed about the story of being disrespected and failing, the future. Your experiment this week is to actively separate the facts from the future. And then ask yourself one powerful reality bending question. What is a more empowering, equally true story I can tell myself about these exact same facts? That's a powerful question to ask. All right, now let's start to wrap up this episode. Reality is not something that passively happens to you. It is something actively constructed by you, moment by moment, belief by belief, filter by filter. If you're exhausted, it might not be because you are actually doing too much. It might be because you are running on a treadmill, chasing an illusion of arrival while looking through a lens of scarcity and fear. Leadership is not just about changing the organization, optimizing processes, or hitting KPIs. True leadership is the profound, difficult internal work of cleaning your own lens so you can finally see the world and your people clearly. There are thousands of leadership podcasts out there, but my ultimate goal is to make the H2H experiment the most impactful personal growth podcast and self-development podcast in your weekly rotation. If this episode challenged you, if it resonated with you, I invite you to join the movement of conscious leadership. And also invite your friends, invite your colleagues, invite people that you believe that can benefit from it. Follow our latest reflections, deep dives, and ongoing discussions on LinkedIn and Substack. You can explore more H2H experiments and tools and frameworks at the h2hexperiment.com or join the community on the ECXO platform, in which we talk a lot about customer experience. And for the full comprehensive roadmap on transforming your leadership from constantly reactive to deeply proactive, check out the HX Revolution book series, available right now on Amazon. Thank you for listening. Thank you for stepping off the treadmill. And thank you for having the courage to challenge your own perception, because you cannot change your reality until you change your filter. Choose your lens wisely. Thank you once again. See you next time. Bye.